All right. The day after the Brock Purdy to Ricky Pearsall connection looked like absolute fire in the 49ers preseason game against the Raiders, we have learned that the 49ers tried to trade for a veteran receiver to fill in depth at what seems to be a rather precarious situation in that receiver group. However, the receiver, John Metchie III, Alabama product, who was with the Texans, ended up going to the Philadelphia Eagles. According to Jordan Schultz here, you see the 49ers with the other team trying to trade for John Metchie, but the Eagles made a better offer. Now, this is not a big name receiver. This is somebody who's been at about 300 or so receiving yards a season. Was obviously very productive in college at Alabama. Was a second round pick back in 2022. But what we can deduce from this information is that the 49ers remain interested in adding a veteran to a unit that has been either decimated by injury or suspension concern, because Demarcus Robinson, who played well yesterday, is probably going to be suspended for the first couple games, maybe the first 3 games of the 2025 season. We do know that the 49ers over the course of the offseason hosted Gabe Davis. I reported that a couple months ago. He's coming off the meniscus injury last year. We don't know, though, even though Gabe Davis seems interested in coming to the 49ers, we don't know how much money he's asking. And this Metchie thing reminds me that the price point, and it should remind everybody that the price point is of critical concern here for the 49ers because of limited salary cap space. Metchie is on the final year of his rookie contract. So the Eagles acquire a player whose base salary is only $1.8 million for 2025. That makes him very likely much cheaper on the salary cap than somebody like Gabe Davis, than somebody like Amari Cooper, both of whom are free agents right now. We know that the 49ers and Juwan Jennings are not seeing eye to eye with his contractual situation. We also know that that's related to the fact that the 49ers awarded Brandon Ayuk a deal worth up to $30 million per year at around this time in 2024. We also know that the 49ers have doubled down on A-list players over the course of the past couple off seasons, leaving them with limited salary cap space in the big picture moving forward. Just because San Francisco may have $45 million in short-term space does not mean that they have a lot of money in the bigger picture, because unused space carries over from season to season. And the costs for these big deals for Brock Purdy, for Fred Warner, for Trent Williams, for George Kittle, those costs are going to escalate. They kept Purdy's cap hit down this year. They're planning to carry over that money that they have available right now into the future. So they want to save as much as possible now to keep the team sustainable. We at least now know that the team is interested in adding a veteran at a rookie deal price point, which would be a veteran on the final year of his rookie contract or something comparable. I told Mike, what are some other options around the same price point? And he had D. Eskridge, fully named Dwayne Eskridge, who's now with the Dolphins, was with the Seattle Seahawks. Hadn't been as productive as Metchie, who, again, has not been an ultra-productive receiver, but would be good veteran depth to raise the floor of the unit. D. Eskridge comes to mind. Somebody like Kendrick Bourne does come to mind as well. He has 2 years left on a contract in New England. He's 30 years old now. Obviously was a trusted agent of the 49ers, but Kendrick would be pricier. Kendrick would cost a good $5 million a year based on the contract that he already has signed with the Patriots that the 49ers would have to inherit. So I'm not sure exactly where their limit lies, and a lot of it might be fungible depending on when Brandon Ayuk is going to return, when they can expect Juwan Jennings back. Can they find a deal with Juwan Jennings that's incentive-based that allows them to still carry over or maintain a chance of carrying over the salary cap space that they want to into the future? I know that there's a lot of murkiness in the Juwan Jennings situation simply because of the fact that he's dealing with both a calf issue and a contract issue. Just for transparency here, as we look at the 49ers depth chart, we can, compare this with what we saw yesterday in the game, which I thought was a tremendous start for Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall. But zooming in on the receiving room, you see a lot of players unavailable due to injury. Ayuk, Jennings, Jordan Watkins, the latest injury, the high ankle sprain, that might keep him out of week one. It at least will prevent him from getting some valuable practice time in week one. And then Demarcus Robinson probably won't be around at the start of the season too. So the number one right now by default, because Juwan Jennings, the runway is getting shorter and shorter for Juwan Jennings to come back from this calf injury as the number one. I think by default, Ricky Pearsall is going to enter the season as the number one for the 49ers. I think he's going to have to play some X for San Francisco up in Seattle on September 7th. Jacob Cowing just came back from the hamstring injury a few days ago. We haven't really heard anything big from him yet. It's probably going to take him a little while to get reintegrated into the fold for the 49ers. They've got Russell Gage, veteran, made a couple catches yesterday. And, I've told people, don't forget about the two veterans who have playing experience, who, are going to be on the bubble of making this roster, depending on who's healthy and if the 49ers make another trade. But Isaiah Hodgins has played in the league before. He's been around for a few years, the San Jose native. And of course, Robbie Chosen has played in this league. He's 32 years old now. Both Hodgins and Chosen made multiple catches yesterday for the 49ers, but it should be very apparent why San Francisco is interested in adding some of this veteran depth. So I just listed some of the possibilities, and I'll say that the overarching look at this, it's very good news for the 49ers that Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall looked to truly have their chemistry yesterday, that they were on the same page yesterday. So speaking of that, Kyle Shanahan delved into the Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall connection and gave us some good intel as to what exactly Ricky has improved to look so good with his quarterback so far in training camp, and then, of course, in yesterday's preseason game against the Raiders.
Oh, yeah, I think that's pretty normal with everybody. The more you play with someone, the better timing you get with each other. Also, when wideouts come from college, it takes a while to learn the timing of an offense, and when you miss all of OTAs and all of training camp, you're usually a little behind on that timing. So Ricky's a real good route runner. Sometimes he gets too concerned with beating the guy and understanding that he's got to do it in the time of when Brock's looking at him. And that's something those guys have really been working through and getting really good at.
So that to me was fascinating, that sometimes Ricky Pearsall gets so fixated on beating the guy in front of him that he hadn't been thinking about the timing on Brock Purdy's end. And it's obviously the ultimate team sport. You've got to have cohesion, and there's only going to be a split-second window where the quarterback can see if he can go to you in the progression. So as a receiver, you need to know when that window is. You need to know when to look for the football. You need to run your route accordingly, which is why the cohesion between quarterback and receiver is so hard to attain. So apparently this was a little bit of a problem over Pearsall's first year, which makes sense. I mean, he missed so much time last season. He got shot in the chest on August 31st. I think a lot of people conveniently disregard that fact. And they also disregard the fact that he finished the season, final two games, 14 catches, 210 yards, including a game where Purdy was the quarterback against the Detroit Lions. So to me, it was obvious that Pearsall was working into this rhythm, into this timing, the more time that he got to work with Brock Purdy last year. Fast forward to this offseason, Ricky Pearsall flew to Jacksonville with Jacob Cowing to work with Brock Purdy, to work with Mac Jones, to nail down some of those timing intricacies for the 49ers. And it seems to me that that work really paid off. What was really cool about covering the game yesterday is that essentially everything that we had been reporting at training camp came to fruition in the game. And one of the main things that I had been reporting at 49ers training camp was that Purdy to Pearsall was fire, that they had true chemistry that they didn't have last year, that Purdy was throwing him the football before he would come out of breaks, that they were splitting safeties on post patterns in practice, that really even on off schedule plays, there was a very, very good cohesion between Purdy and Pearsall. Well, we saw the first three completions of this game against the Raiders go to Ricky Pearsall. First one, fairly basic, out pattern, got the 49ers going. But the second and third completions of this game were truly special. The second one was the naked bootleg, Pearsall crossing the formation. Linebacker cheated, tried to run the route for him on the cross, figuring that Brock Purdy would just be kind of lazy and Pearsall would be kind of lazy, and he would just try to lead him on the crossing route because that's where it was headed in the zone coverage. So the linebacker cheated because he knew that he wasn't as fast as Ricky Pearsall. But both Purdy and Pearsall recognized the cheat, and Pearsall just sat down. And these are split-second decisions. If Pearsall sits down and Purdy throws the ball to where the linebacker thinks it's going to go, to where the play was designed to go, that's an easy interception, and it looks really bad. But because Purdy decided to throw to Pearsall sitting down, and Pearsall did sit down, it turned into a narrow completion. That's the difference between an interception that makes you look stupid and a first down in this league, is chemistry between the quarterback and the wide receiver. And then we really, really saw the play with great timing and great cohesion a couple snaps later. 3rd and 18. Normally you'll pack it in on 3rd and 18. Even if you're in the regular season, it's not usually a play where you dial something too crazy up. But in the preseason, I thought, I don't think the 49ers want to put Brock Purdy at risk. That's when the pass rush can really sink its teeth in. Max Crosby can, all hell can break loose. He can pin his ears back and rush the quarterback and try to sprint around right tackle, which is exactly what he did attempt. But Shanahan trusted Purdy. He trusted Ricky Pearsall. Purdy trusted Pearsall. They ran the concept that backed the defense up. Russell Gage tried to clear everybody out by running deep. Safeties backed up. All they needed was a step further back, and Pearsall ran the skinny post underneath. So, and the linebackers dropping deep in this play too, right? So you've got a couple things going on. The linebackers dropping deep because he's okay with a 5 to 10 yard check down because it's 3rd and 18. So Pearsall still has to get, Purdy still has to get the ball over the linebacker. And to do that is when you're in a bad position on 3rd and 18 is likely going to have to take some eye movement to get the linebacker to be offline. So the throw doesn't have to go right above him because that window is probably going to be too small if it has to go above him. So you have to manipulate the linebacker, and then you have to find a way to drop that throw in front of the safeties who have backed up, who have retreated because Russell Gage is threatening with the deep pass. So 2 things are happening at once as far as depth of the secondary and where that ball has to fit. The third thing that's happening is probably the most distracting one, and that's Max Crosby trying to decapitate you coming around right tackle. To the 49ers' credit, the interior of the offensive line held up. This play would not have worked with interior pressure. So Connor Colby, Jake Brendel, and Dominic Pooney all held up. There was no blindside pressure, at least immediately, for Brock Purdy. Spencer Burford also did a good job. By the way, Spencer only 1 pressure allowed over 27 snaps. And then Colton McKivitz was in a dogfight with Max Crosby, but he was able to force Crosby to run a wide enough hoop around him on the right side that Purdy had time to step up, do his little look off of the linebacker, and then, just perfectly thread a ball, intentionally underthrown, I think you would say. He didn't want to lead Ricky Pearsall right into contact. He led that football right to where it needed to be. Ricky Pearsall's timing was right where it needed to be for Brock Purdy, and that's your QB wide receiver 1 combination for the 49ers. It was a really, really pretty play, and I think a very, very encouraging start for San Francisco. So Pearsall's going to be the one. They got to make sure he stays healthy now moving into the regular season. And then beyond that, it's going to be anybody's guess for the 49ers. Maybe we see another signing or we see another trade. And if we don't and everybody's out, well, then there's a lot of pressure on a Russell Gage. It's a lot of pressure on a Jacob Cowing. Probably a lot of pressure on an Isaiah Hodgins or a Robbie Chosen. You might be, Tom Brady was there yesterday looking like Al Davis with his white jacket. Tom Brady was a master of being able to work with a lot of, castaway receivers, a lot of guys who people didn't view as the most imposing receiving core in the league, although the 2007 Patriots had Randy Moss. And they had really good players. They had Edelman, right? They had Amendola there for a while. But there would be games where Tom Brady wasn't working with a whole lot at the wide receiver position, and he made it work. most quarterbacks, I mean, essentially every quarterback is over a longer stretch of time is going to need some semblance of weapons and separation. It's going to have to be better, for example, for Purdy this year than it was last year with all the injuries, with the 49ers ranked dead last in average separation. But still, if you also, as a quarterback, you could still build a bridge over a short period of time where you don't have premier weapons at wideout, and you could still find a way to make it work. And if you have George Kittle and you have Christian McCaffrey, those are two ways that you can take pressure off the receiver room to try to make it work. And I think that the 49ers have some veterans right now who they really believe can give them some short-term productivity, but obviously they're looking for more, and it makes a whole lot of sense why. They just have to find it at the price point that works for them in the long term, because this team has already mortgaged so much on its A-list players that they have to follow the cost structure that is really the only logical one to follow in a salary capped league. And that is cost efficiency outside the A-list positions. You know, what's crazy, the 49ers, a lot of people talked about the spending restraint this offseason. Even in an offseason of restraint, they've spent the third most cash of any NFL team. The facts are the facts, and that's what's happened for the 49ers. So that's why they are, trying to ease off the gas here, because even when they've said that that's the case, that they've had to pay big contracts to their A-listers to keep those guys around, because that is the core of your team. That's Brock Purdy this offseason. That's Kittle. That's Fred Warner, even a couple years ahead of schedule for Fred Warner. That's going to help the cap situation for the 49ers for sure. But the cash situation, they are still spending big bucks and trying to make it work around those A-list pillar salaries. I just think that the Kyle Shanahan revelation about Ricky Pearsall is so interesting and probably really exciting for the 49ers, considering the fact that he really was able to get that timing work in with Brock Purdy over the course of this offseason. And I think that we really saw it over the first part of training camp and now in that game against the Raiders. And, the 49ers are going to truly game plan in all likelihood for the first time this week, where we're going to get Brock Purdy, maybe against Trey Lance. We'll see. They're not going to be on the field at the same time, I know, but it's going to be fun to see the Lance and Harbaugh revenge attempt, if you want to call it that, at Levi's Stadium. But what the 49ers are doing, they're playing on Saturday. They're going to run this like a normal week. Normally for a Sunday game, you do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice, with Monday and Tuesday being players' days off, guys coming for treatment, but you don't have like team meetings and stuff. Because they're playing at Saturday, 5:30, the 49ers are going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday practice. So no practice today, no practice tomorrow. And this is the final dress rehearsal before the regular season. And they're finally going to game plan things, which means that they're going to be trying to set up plays ahead of time. They're going to try to play starters again, maybe not all of them, maybe guys like Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey get their rest for the 49ers, but they're still going to be in a position where they are trying to test what's going to work on some Sundays, right? It'll probably be relatively vanilla to what we see in the regular season, but they're still going to be trying to put themselves into good spots offensively, which will allow us to gauge where exactly the receiving pecking order stands. Yesterday, we saw the two starters, Pearsall and Demarcus Robinson. We saw Hodgins come in as the third receiver on that first drive with the catch. We saw Russell Gage make a couple nice catches when Mac Jones was in the game. Next week, we're going to get a much clearer picture of how the 49ers rotations might work. And we're going to have to remember, if somebody's out, somebody's intentionally out, we'll have to remember to filter them into the plans, factor them in when the 49ers do take the field in week one. So it's exciting because it's getting more and more real. And it wouldn't shock me if the 49ers did end up making a trade or two. I thought, and I talked about it in my 53-man roster projection, there's a possibility they trade a couple guys away, because there was a big cleaning of the house this offseason on the defensive side of the ball that may not be done yet. I think that they have needs for the players that I listed, somebody like Jordan Elliott, somebody like Jair Brown. So I don't think that a trade is necessarily imminent, but the cut down is coming up. It's going to be on August 26th. And that's going to be one of the first things that really, forces some action when you're trying to fit guys under a 53-man roster. You don't want to expose certain rookies to waivers. trades around the 53-man cut down are very, very possible. So the 49ers might act on that front, and the 49ers might also act on the buyers front, because as a whole, their roster right now, like the team's goals are this is the big picture strategy of the 49ers. Offense has to lead the way. Defense is trying to modernize. They've done a lot of that this offseason. They've got to develop this offseason. Special teams can't screw things up. So if the defense is going to continue trying to modernize, trades away on that side of the ball, unless you could find some exciting young player who really fits into the mix, but trades away on that side of the ball seem to follow the logic of this offseason, where the 49ers were letting some free agents walk to make room for younger players, for rookies. And if they're trying to contend with the offense leading the charge, they would like a higher veteran floor on offense. That's where you start trading for people, right? That's where you start bringing in veterans at positions of need, because the offense is the side filled with experience. The defense is the side that is built around that newfound youth that's going to be shepherded by Robert Saleh into what should be a fascinating season. I'm just wondering, we love going through the performance metrics for the 49ers, right? And we've talked about, in 2022 and 2023, especially those 2 years, rankings at or near the very top of the entire NFL. This is one of the most efficient teams in football. I will stand by my assertion that 2022 was actually the 49ers' best team of the Kyle Shanahan era. Why? Because their defense was a lot better than it was in 2023. They still had DeMeco Ryans in 2022. So that year in 2022, the 49ers, after turning the reins over to Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy, both of those guys were helming a top 3 offense for the 49ers. Purdy got better in 2023. That's when Purdy was his MVP candidate self. So the offense was better in 23, but I think that the defense fell off a little bit that season. But anyway, when we were charting this, we were saying, okay, number 1 offense, number 10 defense by the advanced numbers in 2023. Where are the 49ers going to be this year, 2025, on both sides? I think it's at the core, that's the most fascinating overarching question that there is, right? Like, what is this 49ers team going to be in specifics when it comes to some of these metrics? Are they going to be a top 5 offense? Can they be a top 7 offense, top 10? Okay, wherever they're going to be there, I think that's going to lead the team, because right now I'm setting number 20 as a goal for the 49ers defensively. If they could be better than number 20, I think they've got a shot to contend. I'm not out here saying this is going to be a top 10 defense. I'm not out here even saying this is going to be a top 15 defense. I am realistic about what the expectations for that side of the ball are. And I think that a gradual build under Robert Saleh over the course of the season is what's most likely to happen, what the 49ers are banking on. And because of that, they want to make sure this offense is as fortified as possible so that it can be the leader of the charge for this football team. 49ers tried to trade for John Metchie III. This is from Jordan Schultz. We've got the picture of what he reported up here. There, where the other team trying to trade for him, he went to the Eagles instead. The full trade, by the way, was the Texans receiving a tight end, Harrison Bryant, and a 5th-round pick. The Eagles received John Metchie and a 6th-round pick. So it was a 5-6 pick swap that also was a player trade. And, I'm guessing, when Jordan Schultz says that the Eagles made a better offer, I'm guessing that the Eagles were and the Texans were able to find the player compensation that made a whole lot more sense for this trade, while the Eagles might not have been interested in any of the players that the 49ers wanted to send over to Philadelphia. Because as you can see, the draft pick exchange here is rather negligible. It's a 5-6 pick swap, but the player compensation is interesting. The tight end Harrison Bryant moving over to the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for John Metchie, the wide receiver. Mike has a spreadsheet for me of players who might be on the trade block. Trey Hendrickson, yes. That'd be an acquiring cap hit of $18.7 million, but you'd probably also need to give him a new contract. So pump the brakes on talking about that one for the 49ers. They're trying to modernize on the defense. Tyreek Hill, that's interesting. Yes. The team acquiring him would be on the hook for $27.7 million. Makes me think that's out of the 49ers price range. Probably don't want to deal with a headache there with Tyreek Hill. Seems to be a lot of drama coming with him off the field as well. Breece Hall, I mean, 49ers have a lot of injuries in the running back room. I know Breece was the running back for Brock Purdy at Iowa State. Would be a $4.3 million acquiring cap hit for Breece Hall. Shanahan was intent on pointing out that the running back room doesn't have any season-ending injuries, at least yet yesterday. So I think the 49ers are confident they're going to get some guys back, but I'll tell you, they're going to have to be active on the running back market like now, and they probably already are now, just to get through this next week. Because it's lining up. If you're not interested in playing Christian McCaffrey against the Chargers, and I would totally understand if that's their stance, right now you only have two running backs healthy, Keyshawn Vaughn and Jeff Wilson Jr. So the 49ers are going to have to make a move at that position, but I don't know if it's going to be a splash move for San Francisco. Apparently Kyle Pitts available too, tight end from the Falcons, but that would be a $10.9 million 2025 cap hit. And Dallas Goedert, the Eagles tight end, $10.7 million to an acquiring team. That, according to Mike, are players who might be on the trade block. I just wanted to read that to give you guys an idea of prices. And the 49ers, I really, really would be shocked if they went above a $5 million price point for another wide receiver. Even that might be a little steep for a team that committed all that money to Brandon Ayuk, that is trying to maintain its salary cap sustainability moving into the future and preserve as much carryover space as possible. Metchie, again, the Eagles acquire $1.8 million of base salary this year. So that is a salary cap feasible move. I think it would have been obviously salary cap feasible for the 49ers, which is why they were interested in the first place. But good opportunity to talk about the entire San Francisco 49ers wide receiver room, which was highlighted by that Pearsall to Purdy connection yesterday. Joe says Breece Hall would be decent. I mean, Breece is a good player. He's a good versatile player. He's got the Robert Saleh connection. They've got quite a bit of talent, the 49ers do in the running back room. I don't think they're short of talent there now. Will they be short of health at some point this year? We'll see. Again, the guys that are hurt right now, Jordan James, broken finger, he'll be back. Isaac Guerendo, shoulder, he'll be back before the start of the regular season. So Corey Kiner is probably going to be a few weeks, but he wasn't really projected to make the 53-man roster anyway. Patrick Taylor was the shoulder dislocation. Could you have better depth than Taylor? Of course you can, but are you willing to pay $4 million plus draft capital for it? I highly doubt that. They want some insane 1-2 punch at the top with McCaffrey and Breece Hall. Yeah, then they would splurge for it. But I just don't see it happening given the health situation that the 49ers are in right now. It's not dire. There's guys out, but again, these are short-term injuries at that running back position. Charlie Kolar was Purdy's favorite target in college. The tight end, Charlie Kolar. When I was at Iowa State writing that story on Brock Purdy, they showed me around their training room, and they showed me around this like reflex testing machine where you would, something would light up and you had to hit it really fast to test your peripheral vision and your reflexes. And the guy there told me that it was Brock Purdy and Charlie Kolar who would use that machine the most. And it's, it might have been what developed Purdy's processing power, at least helped him develop his peripheral vision and his processing power. Because he said that he and Charlie Kolar were super, super competitive on this one machine. A lot of good people out there in Ames, Iowa. That was one of my favorite trips to take covering the 49ers. Just headed out there last off season, got to meet with so many people in the Iowa State program. Their head coach, Matt Campbell, offensive coordinator, Taylor Mauser, and people in the training room too, that showed me this old, unfortunately, that old machine was not plugged in anymore. They had gotten a newer one that wasn't as cool, but the one that Brock Purdy and Charlie Kolar used, That one, I think that's that's a historical artifact, something that Iowa State should like cordon off and put in a museum or something. It's like, hey, here's Brock Purdy, MVP candidate, came out of Iowa State, pick number 262. Everybody loves his processing speed. This is the machine that he used to develop some of that processing speed. Thought that'd be a good idea before they throw it into the dumpster. Greg asks, with Ricky, Christian, and George, shouldn't the 49ers be good with just an okay wide receiver too that isn't getting as much defensive attention? I think theoretically, yes, but John Metchie, not really a wide receiver too. John Metchie is maxed out at 300-something yards receiving in a season. I know it's a rudimentary metric, but I'm just using it to illustrate what type of player. You're looking at a wide receiver 3 or 4 here. I think the 49ers are just trying to raise the floor of the receiver unit at 3 and number 4. And that's why they were interested in somebody like John Metchie. I don't think they're necessarily looking for a 2 because they know that the price for a 2 would probably be pretty high. You have to look at the room in its totality. They're not looking for a specific guy. They're looking to raise the floor of the room because they're going to be so reliant on their offense this season. All right, I am looking for more questions up and down this glorious chat section. Yeah, people, and you can't just go out and say, oh, why don't the 49ers trade for a center or go trade for a tackle? Just because they lucked into trading for Trent Williams back in 2020 doesn't mean that teams are looking to trade good offensive linemen. Those guys are in such high demand. So, when you're in such high demand, you're probably not going to want to trade that position because you need that position. That's why the demand is so high in the first place. So, I think it's really important to realize this is not a video game. You don't just press a button and bring in a star player. I know that it seemed that this has been on speed dial for the 49ers with Williams, with Christian McCaffrey, but those trades, those types of moves are exceptions rather than the rule. And the 49ers have pursued big trades more aggressively than probably any other team in the NFL. So you can't get mad at them whenever one doesn't happen at the exact spot that you want, because they have pulled off trades like that. It's just much less likely than it is likely that another one is going to be able to come down the pipeline for San Francisco. Matt Breida did retire, announced his retirement a couple days ago. Pour one out for Matt Breida and his NFL career. It was a fun one. I still remember week 5 against Cleveland, 2019. Matt Breida pitch left, untouched into the end zone, 80 yards for the 49ers. I'll never forget that. Mark asks, who are some tradable players the 49ers have right now? Well, I would say probably somebody like Jair Brown. I mean, he's been a starter at this level, and trade value is determined by what somebody would be willing to pay. A lot of people are like, well, who would be willing to pick up Jair Brown? And I say, well, a defensive coordinator that really likes his skill set. Jair played his best football under Steve Wilks in 2023. Wilks is the defensive coordinator of the Jets. If there's a team that really wants a defensive tackle who might not exactly fit what Robert Saleh is trying to build with a lot of the rookies, so I list somebody like Jordan Elliott. It's just speculation. I think, everyone that has been a productive player at some point in their NFL career is a tradable asset, but you want to keep some of your guys, most of your guys that have been productive for you, especially if you want productivity moving into the future. Mike says, maybe Chase Lucas has value. Who knows? I think Chase has value to the 49ers as a very versatile DB who's really good on the scout team last year. I think he's on the inside track for a roster spot this season. TG wants Michael Williams and Kevin Givens injury updates. Good on both fronts. Well, not on Givens. On Michael Williams. Sorry, I thought you were asking Michael and CJ West. Michael and CJ West, hyperextended knees. Michael, I would think back this week, or at least a week from his injury date. Kevin Givens, CJ West a little bit later than that because it's the same injury, but he got hurt later. Kevin Givens, he's going to be on IR for at least the first part of the season. He's coming off the pectoral injury. So that's the one long-term one along the defensive line. The only reason that I mention Elliott is if the 49ers want to go full out modernization with the defensive line, and if somebody like Sebastian Valdez forces his way onto the roster. But the longer that some of these D tackle injuries linger, and longer this goes without Valdez making an obvious splash to make the roster, the more I lean toward the 49ers just keeping the veteran there. And it's the most likely outcome, right? But people ask me what possibilities are out there. That's a possibility that's out there. But this is why I don't like going too far down the road of speculation, because then everybody starts crying and saying, why this guy? Why that guy? Why not this guy? We could speculate until the cows come home. Look, there's going to be more speculation now because per Jordan Schultz, the Commanders have been shopping a wide receiver, have been shopping running back Brian Robinson Jr. to teams around the NFL. Schultz is the same guy that reported the Metchie deal, and he reported the 49ers' interest in trading for Metchie. So you could see where the 49ers are kicking the tires. You could see what they're interested in, and that's a receiver at a certain price point right now for the 49ers. But that's all that you can really glean with utmost certainty from this entire situation. Any word on what the 49ers are doing to replace Andre Dillard? Well, as Kyle Shanahan said last week, there were a capable swing tackle out there. The 49ers would have signed him. I mean, they thought Isaiah Prince was the most capable guy out of the tryout 2 weeks ago. He played yesterday, but he gave up 2 or 3 pressures and also 3 false start penalties. That was rough from Isaiah Prince. And that guy used to start in playoff games in this league. Spencer Burford played a really good game, though. And Burford was at left tackle for 27 snaps in pass protection, and he only gave up 1 pressure. What's obvious right now is that Burford is better at tackle than he is at guard. And that's not even debatable. Somebody tried to push back on me online. They're like, oh, are you sure about that? And it's not hard for Spencer Burford to be better at tackle than he was at guard, because he was really bad at guard. He was a 2nd percentile pass protector at guard. That means that 98% of guards were better than him in 2023. It obviously wasn't a fit. The guy played tackle in college. They tried to move him into the phone booth at guard. Wasn't a fit. Was a 2nd percentile pass blocker. That's not going to cut it. So they decided to move him out of guard to tackle. And he's actually been playing much better at tackle than he has at guard. There's no debate about any of this. It's all on tape. Just go watch it. Yesterday was Burford's best performance so far between the end of last season and the beginning of this preseason. That was his best performance at the tackle position. 1 pressure allowed, 27 snaps. He didn't get a fair shake by fans and some analysts the week before, because the series where Nick Bonito took over, it basically wasn't his fault. And everybody was blaming Spencer Burford, even though Luke Farrell was late on a block. The 49ers mistimed the snap count, and he didn't get the chipping help from a tight end that he should have gotten. I mean, it was a bad 3-play stretch that everybody threw at Spencer Burford, but it wasn't even his fault. His play at left tackle has actually been solid for San Francisco, and I'm glad that he got a statistically clean game yesterday to illustrate that. So the issue, though, is that because of his struggles at right guard, I think the 49ers are convinced that he's a left side player. So even if he's awesome here backing up Trent Williams and they say, okay, you're our backup left tackle, what do they do at left or at right tackle? Who's the backup there? Is it Austin Pleasance? Yesterday it was Pleasance first, and then Isaiah Prince came in a little bit later. Do they have to find another right tackle to be able to take some of this load off of Colton McKivitz, because now he's got to stay healthy, and he's been a durable player, but I think you have to have a contingency plan there. That, to me, on the right side is very, very interesting. And that's the one drawback. If Spencer Burford can only play at left tackle, he's not a true swing. And it does take a roster spot to address that, because you've got to get two tackles to back up both Trent Williams and Colton McKivitz. How about we start getting ready for next week? This is going to be good. Here's what's coming, because Mike just sent me the video. It's a gem. This is from yesterday. Yes, those are the two guys who you think they are. That is who you think it is. That is Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. The 49ers are in line to face both of these guys this year. Jimmy, I think, is going to be starting for the Rams, at least for the start of the year. It's looking more and more likely by the day. And I think that Trey is going to play next week when the Chargers come to Levi's Stadium. We're talking about Jim Harbaugh, Trey Lance revenge game. This is from the NFL's social media page. So if you want a compelling preseason finale, it's Trey Lance on one side, Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan on the other. Coming up this week after the 49ers run their dress rehearsal. Who's looking forward to it? Raise your hand in the chat section, because I am. I enjoy preseason storylines as much as the next guy. I like the fact that it was Pete Carroll on the other side yesterday for the Raiders. The Jake Moody storyline was epic. It's the first time in sporting, actually not the first time, because a lot of fans can be jerks, right? I thought that the whole drawing attraction of sports was to watch people fight through adversity and make it through tough times and show that you can prevail. And that's exactly what Jake Moody did yesterday. Prevailed through a ton of adversity, ends up kicking a 59-yard field goal to win the game, becomes the first kicker since 2017. So in 8 years, in any game, preseason or regular season or playoffs, to hit a game-tying and a game-winning field goal in the final minute, does all this crazy stuff, and there are still people on the internet, and the key words there are on the internet, who are still not happy for Jake Moody. It's like, grow a soul, like have some, become a human again. Because I think that the internet makes people into robots. Like if a robot were a jerk hybridized at the same time, very unkind robots, we'll put it that way. But it was the actual people who have accomplished something in the room, the football players who are in the NFL, they all mobbed Moody. So unlike some internet keyboard warriors, the people who have accomplished a lot with their lives, they were happy for Jake Moody. So I think it's a good sign for humanity. Those guys still get what the significance of yesterday was. And you know what? Jake Moody's going to have to continue proving himself moving forward. The competition never ends in this league. You can't just sit back and say, okay, I kicked the 59-yard game winner against the Raiders. That's it. He's going to have to show consistency moving forward. But one area where the 49ers needed him to show some consistency was in high pressure situations, and they couldn't quite replicate what they would need to in practice to make Moody prove himself in a high pressure situation, but they showed it, and he showed it in the game yesterday, and that was really good for all parties involved. I'm sure that Brant Boyer is over the moon today that he got that evaluation chance for Jake Moody. That kick was good from at most 62 yards. Well, that's a pretty damn good kick if you're saying that. I think it might have had 63 or 64 in range, but I'm not the one that's calculating that. I have a piece dropping tomorrow. I talked with Jake in the locker room after the game. He said they still went with 2 strides. They didn't go with the 3. So he shortened from 3 to 2 to gain more accuracy. And I wondered if he was going to go to back to 3 for the longer kick, because he did say that moving to 2 shortened his range by 2 or 3 yards, but they stayed with 2. And he said that he was comfortable up to 63 with the two-strided approach. He said if they were trying a 70-yarder, he would go to 3 strides just because that's the power that you would need from 70. Maybe we'll get to see Moody try a 70-yarder next week. I think that would be a lot of fun to watch. We saw Jacksonville's kicker do it the other week. I'm sure he has the leg to do it, but it's very, very hard to be accurate and to not get blocked because of the trajectory on a 70-yarder. But that's just what Moody told me about his technique yesterday. Appreciate you, Todd. Thank you. Little super chat. That's really nice. Coming back from Vegas, where you always spend a lot of money. Remember, you go out to dinner in Vegas, sometimes you may need to take out a loan to pay for it. So Todd's super chat really, really does help us. Smash that like button while you're here. I am looking at some good questions. And I don't see any. That's why I'm not putting any up on the screen. That's why it just says smash it and that like button from Mike. You know what? I think we're good. 45 minutes. We talked about the John Metchie trade to the Philadelphia Eagles. The 49ers obviously interested in a trade. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, hit the alarm bell. We'll be back with you a little bit later on. See you guys later.